Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to show you what you can learn from this very exciting point between Rublev and Andy Murray. So this video is courtesy of 12KGP Tennis. You can see their account right there. Please subscribe to their awesome channel. I've put their link in the description below. So we've got Rublev serving here, Andy Murray right here returning. Let's watch the point in its entirety, and then we'll diagram it. So this is a super fun practice point between these guys at Indian Wells. This is not an actual match. This is just practice. So I want to show you like point by point, shot by shot here, what you can learn. So the first thing is it's a really good serve down the tee. And notice Andy is returning this serve with both hands on the racket. So a lot of players, a lot of two-handers, when they're struggling to reach for a slice backhand, a two-handed backhand return to serve, they're too quick to go to a slice. Take a book or take a page out of Jimmy Connor's book, and really here, same thing with Murray, is see if you can keep both hands on. Now, if you're really stretching to get this ball, then you got to go with one just for the reach. But notice he's really stretching, but he's using both hands here. I love this, that he kept both hands. You can see super short swing. I mean, like no follow through whatsoever. Just kind of punches it back. And it's a really good return. In fact, he gets Rublev in trouble. Rublev on his serve lands inside the baseline, which most high level players do. So he actually gets pushed back by this and ends up with his back to Andy Murray. Now, Murray, because he was in so much trouble on the return, couldn't really attack. Like if he was just blasting that on balance, you would see Murray following it up, forward into no man's land. But he's still recovering from the return, so he's not attacking at this moment. Now, here's a cool little thing where sometimes the pros, they kind of have to figure out how they're going to play the ball. Rublev floats a slice ball, and you'll notice Murray at first looks like he's going to hit a forehand. So look how right there he turns like he's going to, it's a floating ball, and it looks like he's going to run around it and just like pound a forehand either inside in or inside out. But he realizes that this ball right now, he realizes, oh, this is much shorter than I was expecting. So he chooses not to hit it as a forehand, but he just decides to hit it as a backhand. Since this ball is going to land short, he's going to contact this ball from below net level. And when you contact the ball below net level, it's not really in your best interest to run around it, because when you run around it, you leave the court, but then you've got to lift the ball up over the net, which means you can't pound it. So then your opponent has a pretty easy shot into the open court. So he decides to hit a slice. I love that he hits a slice. By the way, watch his footwork. He does not plant his front foot prior to contact. He hits the ball, then his front foot hits the shot. Most amateurs do not do that. Most amateurs plant the front foot, then make contact, which with physics doesn't actually allow you to run through the shot. So I love the fact that the last foot he steps with is actually the foot on the side where he's contacting. That's an easy way to run forward through a shot. So his last foot he steps with is his left foot, which is where he's contacting the left side of his body, and that allows him to just easily move through the shot. It's a great slice. I love how his hands go apart, finishing with the racket face open. Really, really good stuff. Keeping the body to the side as he's making that shot. And I like how he hits the slice to the same corner he did before. So that kind of wrong foots Rublev. So Rublev was going this way, and he hits the ball behind him. So that really gets Rublev in trouble. But Rublev hits a great shot. So when you look like this, when you look like this and you're in trouble, this is what's called a red situation, meaning like you're in trouble. When you're in a red situation, you should hit a red shot. And he hits a red shot. He hits a great lob up over Andy Murray's head. Now, when Andy Murray is running for this ball, notice he doesn't try to hit it as an overhead. He recognizes that he cannot reach that ball, and he's just sprinting. Look at his arms. He's just pumping his arms trying to get to this ball. He actually kind of falls off balance. That's actually why he touches the ground there. It's a little way to catch his balance. These little details. It's so cool. Now let's check out Rublev. So Rublev hits the great lob up over his head, up over Andy Murray's head. And you're going to watch Rublev move two directions. He moves to the middle because he's not sure if Andy is going to hit an overhead. But once he recognizes that Andy isn't going to hit an overhead, then he moves forward. The idea is when you lob over your opponent successfully and get the ball over their head and they're having to run it down, you want to move forward into no man's land. Don't go all the way to the net. That's what Vic Braden called rushing the net to lose at a faster rate. You don't want to get super tight to the net because then they'll lob you. But notice he moves to the center. Look at Rublev moving to the center, and then he starts moving forward because he realizes, Andy's not hitting this as an overhead. Now, this is a cool view. Andy coming right at the camera. This is awesome. Kudos to 12 KGP Tennis for getting this angle here. But look at this shot. This is very much a wrist movement. So if we look at Andy's arm barely moves. So his arm basically stays in one place. He's not swinging from the shoulder. And this is the only way you can play this ball. A lot of players who struggle in this situation, they move from the shoulder and they move the shoulder. This is a wrist flick, right? So it's wrist extension. He's just laying the wrist back, trying to snap this ball into position. Now, when this ball goes up in the air, you'll see where Rublev is. When Andy is hitting this ball, look where Rublev is. He's in the middle of no man's lane. He's actually slightly back behind the middle of no man's lane. He's inside the baseline. That's where you want to be. You want to keep the ball in front of you. He doesn't want to be getting super tight, and because then Andy's... Oh, sorry, I pushed the wrong button there. So Andy's in a ton of trouble. So Rublev is going into no man's land so that when the ball pops up, he can quick attack the ball. He's like, please don't stay behind the baseline when you lob over your opponent and you successfully lob over them and they have to run it down. Don't stay behind the baseline. Move up into no man's land, and you're going to try to get this next ball out of the air. Now, let's look at this overhead technique. So we can see Rublev. Is he pointing at the ball? No. Don't point to the ball on your overheads. Do what the pros do. Turn with both hands. You can reach up with your non-hitting hand. Now, we don't see that. We don't see him, but trust me, he does reach up. It's just Andy's in the way. But he does reach up. But you want to reach up after you've turned so that it's part of the throwing motion. If you just point at the ball, as an amateur player, we typically don't turn and make it like a throwing motion, and then our overhead actually suffers. So Andy's way back here. Now, when Andy's back, it would be incorrect for Rublev to hit the overhead deep and hard. So what he should actually do is angle it off, and that's what he does. You'll see his overhead lands in the service box. So the ball lands in the service box and leaves the court at an angle. So work on with your return to serve. If you've got a two-hander, keep both hands on when you're stretching. And you'll actually hit a more powerful, more secure shot. If you are in a lot of trouble, you can see that slice backhand. You got to learn a slice backhand. If you don't have a slice backhand, it's difficult to get out of trouble. Here's Andy hoping to be able to hit a inside-out forehand, but don't leave the court and then contact from below net level to hit a forehand. If it's going to be low when you get there, then make it a backhand and try a slice backhand. Most of your opponents are not used to slice backhands because most of your opponents don't hit slice backhands. So work on a slice backhand. Give your opponent something they're not used to. I love the lob here that he hits, that Rublev hits. And when Andy realizes he can't get it, he's pumping his arms. And then Rublev recognizes that and he's moving forward. Don't lob your opponent and stay behind the baseline. If you lob them successfully, move into no man's land so you can get the next shot out of the air. See if you can flick your wrist to be able to get these balls back up over the net. When you turn for an overhead, turn with both hands on the racket like the pros. All pros do that initially when they turn. And then when you get your opponent way back deep and you're hitting an overhead, angle it off to win the point. So you work on these ideas, there is no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.